The transport ship landed with a soft thud on the crystal platform of Zenthera Station. Jake Miller pressed his face against the small window and whistled softly. The alien world looked like something from a dream. Purple grass swayed in the Vaux, gentle breeze, and 3 moons hung in the pale green sky like giant pearls. "Would you look at that?" Amy Foster said from the seat beside him. She adjusted the straps on her backpack and checked her cargo containers one more time. "I still can't believe we made it." Jake grinned and patted the largest container beside his feet. "Wait until they see what we brought them. They're going to love learning about Earth animals." The other human students were gathering their belongings and talking excitedly. This was the first time humans had been invited to join the Galactic Educational Institute. Earth had only been discovered by the galactic community 5 years ago, and the aliens were still very curious about the strange new species from the dangerous planet they called a death world. The airlock hissed open, and a sweet smell drifted into the ship. It reminded Jake of flowers and vanilla. An alien stepped through the doorway and several students gasped quietly. Professor Veltar looked like a walking tree made of silver bark. His limbs were long and thin, and small blue leaves grew from his shoulders and arms. His face was gentle, with large golden eyes that seemed to glow softly. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes. "Welcome, students from Earth," Professor Veltar said slowly. "I am honored to meet you. Please, follow me to the processing center." The humans grabbed their bags and containers. Jake struggled a bit with his heavy cargo box, but he managed to lift it. Amy had 3 smaller containers that she carried carefully, as if they held precious jewels. They walked through a corridor made of what looked like living crystal. The walls pulsed gently with soft light, and Jake could hear a faint humming sound. Other aliens stopped to stare at the human group. Some looked curious, others seemed nervous. A group of tall, blue-skinned aliens with 4 arms whispered to each other as the humans passed. Jake heard words like Deathworlders and dangerous in the universal translator device in his ear.
"Why do they keep calling us that?" Amy asked quietly. "Deathworlders?" Jake shrugged. "I guess Earth is tougher than most planets. Can't be that bad though, right?" They reached a large room filled with scanning equipment. Professor Veltar gestured
for them to place their belongings on a long metal table. "This is standard procedure," he explained. "We must scan all items from your world for safety reasons. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, so we must be very careful." Jake and Amy exchanged glances. Class 12 sounded pretty serious, but they had no idea what it meant. The first few bags went through the scanners without problems. Clothes, books, and personal items all passed inspection. Then Jake placed his large container on the scanner bed. Immediately, red lights began flashing. A loud alarm filled the room. Several alien technicians jumped backward and one dropped his scanning device. "Biological hazard detected," announced a mechanical voice. "Multiple life forms present. Quarantine protocols activated." Professor Veltar's golden eyes grew wide. His blue leaves rustled with what looked like fear. "Mr. Miller," he said in a shaky voice. "What exactly have you brought to our station?" Jake looked confused. "Oh, just some friends from home. You know, for the biology classes. I thought it would be cool to show everyone what Earth animals are like." "Earth animals?" Professor Veltar repeated. His voice got higher. "You brought creatures from a Class 12 death world?" "Well, yeah," Jake said with a big smile. "Wait until you meet them. They're awesome." Amy placed her containers on the scanner next. The same alarms went off, even louder this time. More aliens gathered around, all looking very worried. A small alien with purple skin and 6 legs scuttled over to Professor Veltar. She looked like a cross between a spider and a butterfly, with colorful wings that fluttered nervously. "Professor," she said in a high, squeaky voice, "my students are asking if we should evacuate the building. The scans show predator-class organisms in those containers." "Predators?" Amy laughed. "These guys? They're totally harmless. Well, mostly harmless. I mean, you just have to know how to handle them." The purple alien fainted on the spot. 2 other Aliens caught her before she hit the floor. Professor Veltar took several deep breaths. Mr. Miller, Miss Foster, I think there has been a serious misunderstanding. When we invited humans to study here, we expected you to bring books and learning materials. Not living weapons. Living weapons. Jake looked hurt. Professor, these aren't weapons, they're pets, companions. Some of them are really cuddly. Cuddly, Professor Veltar whispered, as if the word was foreign to him. Amy opened her mouth to explain, but another alarm started blaring. Security guards began running toward them. These aliens were bigger and wore thick armor that covered their entire bodies. Students, please step away from the containers, one guard ordered through his helmet speaker. But they need fresh air, Amy protested. And Whiskers gets cranky when she's been traveling too long. Whiskers? Professor Veltar asked weakly. My cat, Amy said proudly. She's the sweetest little thing. Really good with kids, too. The security chief, a massive alien that looked like a walking rock, stepped forward. Did the human just say, she brought a feline predator to an educational institution? She's not a predator, Amy said, getting a little annoyed. She's a house cat. She mostly just sleeps and plays with yarn. The rock alien turned to his team. Code Orange, he announced. Possible Class 7 hunter loose on station. Prepare containment protocols. Jake threw up his hands. Okay, I think. Everyone needs to calm down here. These are just normal Earth animals. Nothing scary about them. Normal Earth animals, Professor Veltar repeated slowly. From a Class 12 death world. Right, Jake said, still not understanding why everyone looked so scared. Professor Veltar closed his golden eyes and seemed to be counting to 10. When he opened them again, he looked at the two humans with something between fear and fascination. Mr. Miller, Ms. Foster, he said carefully. I think we need to have a very long talk about what you consider normal. 3 days later, Jake and Amy sat in their first xenobiology class. The room was shaped like a giant flower, with curved walls that glowed softly. 23 alien students sat in seats that looked like mushrooms, all staring at the two humans, with curious eyes. Professor Veltar stood at the front of the class, his blue leaves rustling nervously. He had spent the last 3 days in meetings with the station security team, trying to figure out what to do about the human students and their mysterious containers. Today, we will learn about different planet ecosystems, he announced. Our human guests have offered to share information about their home world. Jake raised his hand excitedly. Professor, can we show them our teaching materials now? I think they'll really understand Earth better if they can see some real examples. The alien students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A tall, thin alien with green skin and 4 eyes leaned over to whisper to his friend. Teaching materials from a death world, he said quietly. This should be interesting. Professor Veltar's golden eyes grew worried. Mr. Miller, perhaps we should start with pictures or videos first. Pictures are boring, Amy said with a smile. Besides, we brought the perfect starter animal. She's super calm and friendly. Amy walked over to her smallest container, which had been placed in the corner of the room under heavy guard. The security guards stepped back as she approached, their hands moving toward their weapons. It's okay, guys, Amy said cheerfully. Whiskers doesn't bite. Well, not unless you're a mouse or something. Several alien students made gasping sounds. A small furry alien that looked like a teddy bear covered his eyes with his paws. Amy opened the container carefully. A soft meowing sound came from inside, and the entire class went dead silent. Come on, girl, Amy said gently. Time to meet your new friends. A small orange and white cat jumped out of the container and onto the floor. Whiskers looked around the room with bright green eyes, then sat down and began cleaning her paw with her tongue. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Half the class screamed. The teddy bear alien fainted and fell off his mushroom seat. 3 insect-like students ran for the door, their wings buzzing in panic. Predator in the classroom, shouted a blue alien with tentacles for arms. Everyone run! Wait, wait, Jake called out, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Whiskers, startled by all the noise, arched her back and hissed. This made the screaming even louder. A snake-like alien student threw himself under his desk and 2 more aliens started climbing the walls. Professor Veltar pressed an emergency button, and security guards rushed into the room with their weapons. Drawn, stand down, the security chief ordered. Nobody move. Whiskers, completely unbothered by the chaos around her, walked over to Amy and rubbed against her legs, purring loudly. That sound, gasped a purple alien with wings. It's making threat displays. No, Amy said, picking up Whiskers and holding her gently. She's purring. It means she's happy. Happy? Professor Veltar stared at the cat in Amy's arms. That creature is expressing joy? Of course, Amy said. Listen, she's really purring now because I'm petting her. Amy stroked Whiskers behind the ears and the cat's purring got louder. Several alien students looked like they were about to pass out. Look at those claws, whispered the green-skinned student. They retract and extend at will. Perfect killing. Tools. Those aren't for killing, Jake said, finally finding his voice. Well, I mean, cats do hunt sometimes, but Whiskers mostly uses her claws for climbing and scratching her scratching post. It has a designated sharpening station for its weapons, Professor Veltar asked weakly. It's not a weapon, Amy laughed. It's furniture. Cat furniture. The security chief stepped closer, his rock-like face serious. Human. That creature has forward-facing eyes, binocular vision. That's the mark of a hunter. Well, yeah, Jake admitted. Cats are hunters. But Whiskers here mostly hunts dust bunnies and the occasional bug. Bugs? The insect students who hadn't run away yet immediately fled the room. Amy sat down in her chair, still holding Whiskers. Guys, I think there's been a big misunderstanding. Whiskers isn't dangerous. She's a pet, a companion animal. You keep predators as companions? Asked a student with silver skin and no visible mouth. Lots of humans do, Jake said proudly. Dogs, cats, birds, reptiles. All kinds of animals live with us. Reptiles, Professor Veltar repeated faintly. Whiskers chose that moment to yawn, showing all her sharp teeth. 3 more students immediately left the classroom. Those fangs, breathed the silver student. How do you sleep at night knowing that creature is in your dwelling? Amy looked confused. She sleeps on my bed, right next to me, sometimes on my pillow. It sleeps with you? Professor Veltar grabbed his desk for support. You allow a predator to position itself next to your vulnerable sleeping form. She keeps me warm, Amy said simply. And she's really soft. Jake walked over to Amy and gently petted Whiskers too. The cat purred even louder and closed her eyes in contentment. See? Jake said to the remaining students. She's totally relaxed. If she was dangerous, would she act like this? Maybe it's waiting for the right moment to strike, suggested the teddy bear alien, who had just woken up from his faint. Whiskers opened one green eye, looked at the alien, then closed it again, and continued purring. She's not plotting anything, Amy said, with a giggle. The most dangerous thing she does is knock stuff off tables when she wants attention. It destroys property for entertainment? Professor Veltar asked. Sometimes, Jake admitted. But it's not malicious. She's just being a cat. The purple-winged alien raised a shaky hand. Human Amy, how long have your species coexisted with these cats? Thousands of years, Amy replied. They used to be wild, but they decided to live with us. We help each other out. They chose to live with you? Professor Veltar sat down heavily in his chair. The predators made a conscious decision to cohabitate with your species? Pretty much, Jake said. We give them food and shelter. They give us companionship and pest control. Pest control, the professor muttered. They hunt other creatures for you. Well, mice and rats can be problems, Amy said. Cats help keep them away. Whiskers stretched in Amy's arms, extended her claws for a moment, then settled back down to sleep. Students, Professor Veltar announced in a shaky voice. Class is dismissed for today. I need to contact the Xenobiology Council immediately. As the alien students filed out of the room, still looking shocked, Jake turned to Amy. I think that went pretty well, he said cheerfully. Amy looked around the nearly empty classroom. Yeah, they seemed really interested. Wait until they meet the others. Professor Veltar overheard this comment and had to sit down again. Others? He whispered. The next morning, Jake woke up feeling excited. Word had spread quickly through the station about the humans and their dangerous predator companion. Students from other classes kept peeking into their dormitory windows, trying to catch a glimpse of Whiskers. Amy was already awake, feeding Whiskers small pieces of chicken from their meal packets. The cat purred happily and rubbed against Amy's hand. I think we're famous, Jake said, looking out the window at a group of alien students gathered outside. Professor Veltar sent a message, Amy said, holding up her communication device. He wants us to do another presentation today. Apparently, the Xenobiology Council is very interested in learning more about Earth animals. Jake grinned and walked over to his containers. Perfect. I've been dying to show them Charlotte. She's been cooped up in there for days. And Buddy, Amy added. He needs some exercise. An hour later, they stood in a much larger classroom. This time, there were not just students, but also professors and scientists from all over the station. Some wore protective gear, and Jake noticed several medical teams standing by with emergency equipment. Professor Veltar looked like he hadn't slept all night. His blue leaves were drooping, and his golden eyes were dim with worry. Beings of the Galactic Educational Institute, he announced. Today we will observe more specimens from the death world known as Earth. Please remain calm and follow all safety protocols. Jake stepped forward with his second container. Thanks, Professor. I'm really excited to introduce everyone to Charlotte. She's one of my favorites. Charlotte? Repeated a scientist in the front row. What type of organism is Charlotte? She's a tarantula, Jake said proudly. A really beautiful one, too. Mexican redknee. About 5 years old. The word tarantula caused an immediate stir in the audience. The insectoid aliens in the room began clicking their mandibles in distress, and several 8-legged aliens looked deeply offended. Did he say arachnid? Whispered a spider-like alien to her neighbor. From a death world? Jake opened the container carefully. Inside was a large, hairy spider with orange and black markings on her legs. Charlotte sat calmly on a piece of bark, completely unbothered by all the attention. The reaction was instant chaos. Every insectoid alien in the room either fainted or ran for the exits. The spider-like aliens looked horrified and began chattering in their native language about giant predatory cousins and evolutionary nightmares. Magnificent, breathed a scientist wearing a full-body protective suit. Look at the size of those chelicerae. Those fangs could inject enough venom to kill several beings our size. Oh, Charlotte's not venomous enough to hurt a person, Jake said casually, reaching into the container. Well, I mean, her bite might hurt a little, but it's not dangerous. He gently lifted Charlotte out of the container. The spider sat calmly. In his palm, her 8 legs spread out for balance. Half the remaining audience immediately left the room. You're touching it, gasped Professor Veltar, with your bare hands. She's really gentle, Jake explained. Tarantulas get a bad reputation, but they're actually pretty calm. Charlotte here has never bitten anyone. Charlotte raised her front leg slightly, feeling the air currents in the room. To the aliens, this looked like an attack posture. It's preparing to strike, shouted a security guard. No, she's just checking out her surroundings, Jake said patiently. See how she's moving. Her legs, she's tasting the air. That's how spiders learn about their environment. Amy stepped forward with her own container. Speaking of environments, Buddy's been really patient, but I think he needs some space to stretch out. Buddy? Professor Veltar asked weakly. My ball python, Amy said cheerfully. He's about 4 feet long and really sweet. The remaining aliens in the room went completely silent. Even the security guards took several steps backward. Amy opened her container and lifted out a thick golden-brown snake. Buddy coiled gently around her arm, his tongue flicking out to taste the air. Snake, whispered someone in the audience. Giant serpent from the death world. He's not giant, Amy laughed. Ball pythons stay pretty small. Some of the pythons back home can get 20 feet long. Several more beings left the room immediately. Buddy raised his head and looked around. With calm, dark eyes, his tongue continued to flick in and out as he sampled the chemical signals in the air. Those heat sensors, a reptilian scientist observed from behind a protective barrier. It can detect the body heat of every being in this room. Well, yeah, Amy said. That's how snakes hunt. But Buddy here eats pre-killed mice. He hasn't hunted live prey in years. It consumes rodents, Professor Veltar said faintly. Jake, still holding Charlotte, walked closer to the audience. That's another thing that's cool about Earth animals. They all have different diets and hunting styles. Charlotte here eats insects and small lizards. The few remaining insectoid and reptilian students quickly evacuated. And cats like Whiskers are obligate carnivores, Amy added helpfully. They have to eat meat to survive. Your companion animal is a mandatory flesh eater, stated the reptilian scientist. Basically, yeah, Amy said. But we just buy her food at the store. It's not like she's out hunting every day. Jake carefully placed Charlotte on the demonstration table. The spider immediately began exploring, her legs moving gracefully across the surface. Watch this, Jake said excitedly. Charlotte, come here. Girl. He tapped the table gently with his finger. Charlotte turned toward the sound and walked slowly in his direction. It responds to commands, breathed a remaining observer. Sort of, Jake said. She recognizes vibrations and learns routines. Tarantulas are smarter than people think. Amy let Buddy coil around her shoulders like a living scarf. The snake seemed perfectly content, occasionally lifting his head to look around the room. How do you transport these creatures without being killed? Asked the reptilian scientist. Travel carriers, Amy said, pointing to the containers. Buddy actually likes small spaces, makes him feel secure. The serpent prefers confinement. It's not confinement, Amy explained. It's like having a cozy den. Snakes like to feel safe and hidden. Professor Veltar sat down heavily, staring at the two humans and their animals. Students from Earth, I must ask you a very important question. Sure, Professor, Jake said, while Charlotte explored his hand. How many more of these creatures did you bring? Jake and Amy looked at each other and smiled. Well, Jake said slowly, we've got Speedy, our box turtle, and Hermie, our hermit crab. Oh, and Amy brought her axolotl. And don't forget about the Madagascar hissing cockroaches, Amy added helpfully. Professor Veltar made a sound like air leaking from a balloon and slumped forward onto his desk. Should we get the medical team? Jake asked, looking concerned. Charlotte chose that moment to rear up on her hind legs in what Jake knew was a normal stretching behavior. To the aliens, it looked like the spider was preparing to attack. The last few observers ran screaming from the room, leaving only Jake, Amy, their animals, and the unconscious professor. I think we broke them, Amy said thoughtfully as Buddy curled up for a nap around her neck. Jake gently placed Charlotte back in her container. Maybe we should have started with Speedy. Turtles are pretty non-threatening. I don't know, Amy said, looking at the empty classroom. Remember how they reacted to Whiskers? These guys might think a turtle is some kind of armored war beast. Professor Veltar woke up 3 hours later in the medical bay. His blue leaves were pale and drooping, and his golden eyes looked tired. Dr. Mordak, the station's xenopsychologist, sat beside his bed taking notes on a datapad. How are you? Feeling? Dr. Mordak asked. She was a tall gray alien with large kind eyes and tentacles instead of arms. Confused, Professor Veltar admitted, and frightened. Dr. Mordak, I've been teaching xenobiology for 40 years, but I've never encountered anything like these humans. Dr. Mordak nodded thoughtfully. I've been studying the recordings from your classroom. The behavior patterns are remarkable. Remarkable? Professor Veltar sat up in his bed. Those creatures could have killed every student in that room. That's just it, Dr. Mordak said gently. They could have, but they didn't. More importantly, the humans showed no fear whatsoever. In fact, they displayed protective and nurturing behaviors toward these dangerous organisms. Professor Veltar thought about Jake holding the giant spider and Amy letting the serpent wrap around her neck. It makes no sense. How can they be so calm around such deadly predators? I think I'm beginning to understand, Dr. Mordak said. I've been researching Earth's classification as a Class 12 death world. The survival rates for most galactic species on that planet would be less than 5%. 5%, Professor Veltar repeated weakly. But humans evolved there. They didn't just survive alongside these creatures, they learned to live with them, to understand them, even to care for them. Meanwhile, in their dormitory, Jake and Amy were dealing with their own problems. Word about their animals had spread throughout the entire station. Crowds of curious aliens gathered outside their windows at all hours, trying to catch glimpses of the death world monsters. Jake sat on his bed, gently cleaning Charlotte's habitat while the tarantula explored a small branch. Amy was on the floor watching Buddy slowly move through a cardboard tube she had made for him. I feel bad about Professor Veltar, Amy said quietly. We didn't mean to scare him so much. I know, Jake replied. I just don't understand why. Everyone's so afraid. These guys are practically pets back home. There was a soft knock on their door. Jake carefully placed Charlotte back in her container before opening it. A small alien stood in the hallway. She looked like a cross between a butterfly and a praying mantis with colorful wings and large compound eyes. Jake recognized her as one of the students who had stayed longest in their classroom. Hi, she said nervously. I'm Kixara. I was in your biology class. Oh, hey, Jake said with a smile. Come in. Sorry about all the chaos yesterday. Kixara stepped inside hesitantly, her wings twitching with nervous energy. I wanted to ask you something, but I don't want to be rude. Ask away, Amy said, pausing in her snake watching. Why aren't you afraid? Kixara asked quietly. Those creatures could hurt you, kill you even, but you touch them like they're friends. Jake and Amy looked at each other. It was the first time anyone had asked them a real question instead of just screaming and running away. Because they are friends in a way, Jake said thoughtfully. I mean, Charlotte's not going to have a conversation with me, but we understand each other. Understand each other? Kixara's compound eyes focused intently on Jake. Amy nodded. You learn to read their body language, their moods. When Buddy coils up tight, I know he's feeling stressed. When Charlotte raises her front legs like she did yesterday, she's just checking things out. But they're predators, Kixara said, still confused. So are we, technically, Jake pointed out. Humans eat meat. We have forward-facing eyes for hunting just like cats do, but that doesn't make us monsters. Kixara thought about this for a moment. On my homeworld, we only have plant eaters and very small insect hunters. Nothing like what you've shown us. What's your planet like? Amy asked curiously. Peaceful, Kixara said immediately. Quiet, safe. We never have to worry about being hurt by other animals. Jake nodded slowly. Earth's not like that. It's beautiful, but it can be dangerous. Storms, earthquakes, volcanoes. And yeah, some animals that can hurt you if you're not careful. So you learn to be careful, Kixara said. More than that, Amy said. We learn to pay attention, to really watch and listen. When you understand an animal, you can predict what it's going to do. Kixara moved a little closer to Buddy's container. The snake was coiled peacefully inside, his head resting on his own body. He looks calm, she observed. He is, Amy said proudly. See how his muscles are relaxed? If he was upset or scared, he'd be coiled much tighter, and his head would be up and alert. And the spider? Jake gently tapped Charlotte's container. The tarantula moved one leg in response but didn't seem bothered. Happy as can be, Jake said. She's got food, water, a clean habitat, and no stress. That's pretty much everything a tarantula needs. Kixara was quiet for a long moment, studying the containers. Can I tell you something? She said finally. Sure, both humans said. Everyone on the station is talking about you. Some are saying you're crazy. Others think you're lying about the creatures being harmless. Jake's face fell. We're not lying. I know, Kixara said quickly. That's what I wanted to tell you. I've been watching you both for 3 days now. The way you move around these animals, the way you care for them. You're not acting like people who are afraid for their lives. Amy smiled. Thanks for noticing. But there's something else, Kixara continued. Yesterday, when that security guard's scanner fell and made that loud noise, what did you do? Jake thought back. I covered Charlotte's container so the sound wouldn't stress her out. Exactly, Kixara said. Your first instinct wasn't to protect yourself from the dangerous predator. It was to protect the predator from scary noises. Amy blinked in surprise. I didn't even think about it. That's what I mean, Kixara said excitedly. On my world, if a predator was nearby and there was a sudden loud noise, we would assume the predator would attack. But you assumed it, would be frightened. Jake sat down on his bed thinking. I guess we do see them differently. Dr. Mordak thinks that's because you evolved together, Kixara explained. She says humans develop something called empathy for other species because you had to understand them to survive. Empathy, Amy repeated thoughtfully. The ability to understand what another being is feeling, Kixara said. Even beings that are very different from you. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and an announcement echoed through the building. Emergency Protocol 7, the voice said. All students report to safe rooms immediately. Dangerous weather phenomenon approaching station. Through their window, Jake could see the sky turning an angry purple color. Lightning was flashing in colors he had never seen before, and the wind was getting stronger. Storm beast season, Kixara said nervously. They ride the electrical storms if one gets into the station. She didn't finish the sentence, but Jake could see the fear in her compound eyes. How dangerous are these storm beasts? Amy asked. Very, Kixara whispered. They're bigger than your snake, with electricity running through their bodies. Last year, one got into the engineering section and destroyed half the power grid. Outside, something large and glowing crashed into the side of the building. The walls shook and the lights flickered. It's inside, Kixara said, her wings trembling with terror. The building shook again, harder this time. Jake could hear the sound of breaking glass somewhere in the distance, followed by screams and running footsteps in the hallway. We need to get to the safe rooms, Kixara said, her wings beating frantically. The storm beast will tear this place apart looking for electrical sources. Jake and Amy quickly secured their animal containers. Through the window, they could see a massive creature moving through the corridor of the next building. It looked like a cross between a dragon and a living lightning bolt, with electricity crackling along its blue-scaled body. That thing is huge, Amy whispered. The storm beast was about 12 feet long, with 6 powerful legs and a tail that sparked with electrical energy. Its eyes glowed white-hot, and every few seconds, bolts of lightning would shoot from its body to the metal walls around it. They're attracted to power sources, Kixara explained as they hurried toward the door. Lights, computers, anything electrical. They feed on energy. Just as they reached the hallway, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in dim red light. But the brief darkness had given the storm beast enough time to crash through the wall separating the buildings. It landed in their corridor with a thunderous crash, sending sparks flying in every direction. Students and faculty were running in panic, trying to reach the safe rooms at the end of the hall. The storm beast raised its head and roared. The sound was like thunder mixed with the screech of tearing metal. Lightning danced along its scales, and its glowing eyes focused on the fleeing aliens. It's going to charge, Kixara whimpered. When they get excited, they release all their stored electricity at once. Everyone in this hallway will be fried. Jake watched the creature carefully. Its body language reminded him of an angry bull or a territorial horse. The way it lowered its head, the way its muscles tensed, the way its tail lashed back and forth. Amy, he said quietly, remember when we had to deal with that angry stallion at the ranch last summer? Amy looked at him, understanding immediately. The one that got spooked by the thunderstorm? Same body language, Jake said. It's scared and angry, but it's not really hunting. It's just trying to defend itself. You want to calm down a 12-foot lightning monster? Kixara asked in disbelief. We have to try, Amy said. Look at all those people trapped at the end of the hall. The storm beast took a step forward, electricity crackling more violently around its body. Several aliens were pressed against the sealed safe room door, unable to get inside because the electronic locks had failed. Jake took a deep breath and stepped out into the open corridor. "Hey there, big guy," he said in a calm, steady voice. The storm beast's glowing eyes immediately focused on him, its head tilted slightly as if it was surprised to see someone who wasn't running away. "Easy now," Jake continued, keeping his voice low and soothing. "Nobody wants to hurt you. You're just scared because you're not supposed to be inside, right?" Amy moved to Jake's other side, also speaking in gentle tones. "It's okay, we understand. Sometimes storms are scary. Sometimes you end up places you don't mean to be." The storm beast's tail stopped lashing quite so violently. Its head came up a little and the lightning around its body dimmed slightly. "That's it," Jake said encouragingly. "You're a smart one, aren't you? You know we're not a threat." Kixara watched in amazement as the massive creature's posture began to relax. The other aliens in the hallway had stopped running and were staring in shock at the two humans calmly talking to the storm beast. "Look at its breathing," Amy whispered to Jake. "It's slowing down." Jake nodded. "And see how its eyes aren't as bright? It's starting to calm down." The storm beast took a tentative step toward them, then stopped. It lowered its great head and made a sound that was almost like a whimper. "Oh," Amy said softly. "Look at its front leg." Jake could see it now. The creature was favoring its right front leg, holding it at an odd angle. "You're hurt, aren't you?" Amy said gently. "That's why you crashed into the building. You weren't attacking, you were looking for help." The storm beast made that whimpering sound again, and for a moment, the electricity around its body disappeared completely. "Amy," Jake said quietly, "do you still have that emergency medical kit in your backpack?" "Always," she replied. "But Jake, I don't know anything about storm beast anatomy." "Doesn't matter," Jake said. "An injured leg is an injured leg. Same. Basic principles." Moving very slowly, Amy slipped off her backpack and pulled out a small medical kit. The storm beast watched her carefully but didn't seem alarmed. "It's okay," she murmured as she approached. "We just want to help." The creature allowed her to come close enough to examine its injured leg. Jake could see where a piece of metal from the wall had cut deep into the creature's hide. "Just a bad cut," Amy said softly. "But it's bleeding pretty heavily." Working with the same gentle confidence she showed with Buddy and Whiskers, Amy cleaned the wound and applied a pressure bandage. The storm beast stood perfectly still, occasionally rumbling deep in its chest, not with anger but with what sounded almost like gratitude. "There," Amy said, securing the bandage. "That should help until you can get proper medical attention." The storm beast lifted its head and looked at both humans for a long moment. Then it did something that made everyone in the hallway gasp in amazement. It purred. The sound was deeper than Whiskers' purr, more like a giant motor running. But it was unmistakably the same type of contented rumble. "Well, I'll be," Jake said with a grin. "You're just a big softy, aren't you?" The storm beast gently nuzzled Amy's shoulder with its massive head, careful not to let any electricity arc between them. Then it turned and walked slowly back toward the hole it had made in the wall. At the opening, it paused and looked back at the humans one more time. Lightning flickered briefly around its body, not in anger or fear, but in what looked almost like a farewell gesture. Then it leaped through the hole and disappeared into the storm outside. The hallway was completely silent for several long moments. "Incredible," whispered Professor Veltar, who had arrived with the medical team just in time to see the storm beast leave. "Absolutely incredible." "How did you know it wouldn't attack you?" asked Dr. Mordak, staring at Jake and Amy in wonder. Jake shrugged. "Same way we know Charlotte won't bite us or Buddy won't strangle us. You watch, you listen, and you try to understand what they're feeling." "But it's an alien creature," Professor Veltar protested. "From a completely different evolutionary background." "So are our pets in a way," Amy said thoughtfully. "Cats and snakes and spiders all evolved separately from humans. But fear is fear, pain is pain, and gratitude is gratitude. Some things are universal. Kixara flew over to them, her compound eyes bright with excitement. The way you moved, the way you spoke to it, it was just like how you act with your earth animals. Because it's the same skill, Jake realized. Understanding other living beings no matter where they come from. Dr. Mordak was taking rapid notes on her datapad. This changes everything we thought we knew about Deathworld species, she said. You don't just survive alongside dangerous creatures, you communicate with them. I guess we do, Amy said, looking surprised by the realization. Professor Veltar approached them slowly. Students Jake and Amy, he said formally, I owe you an apology. And more than that, I owe you my gratitude. You saved many lives today. We just did what felt right, Jake said. Exactly, Professor Veltar said with something like wonder in his voice. You did what felt right. That's what makes you extraordinary. Over the following weeks, everything changed at the Galactic Educational Institute. Jake and Amy became the most popular teachers on the station, giving classes on dangerous species communication and empathetic interspecies relations. Their Earth animals became beloved celebrities rather than feared monsters. Students would come from across the galaxy just to watch Jake gently handle Charlotte or see Amy let Buddy curl around her shoulders. But most importantly, the aliens learned something new about the strange humans from the death world called Earth. They learned that surviving in a dangerous place didn't make humans hard or cruel. Instead, it had made them uniquely capable of understanding and connecting with other forms of life. Even the scariest ones, Amy would tell her students with whiskers purring contentedly in her lap, are usually just trying to live their lives, same as us. And in the end, that lesson proved to be the most valuable thing the humans brought to the stars.